I woke up to the sound of paper sliding across hospital sheets. Not the rustle of get-well cards, not flowers being delivered, just paper. Cold, deliberate paper. My abdomen screamed. The morphine drip wasn't doing its job, or maybe it was, and this pain was just that overwhelming. 36 hours post-op. They'd cut me open from hip to rib cage, reached inside my body, and taken out a piece of me, a kidney, my kidney. For him. For Darius. My husband of 11 years stood by the window of Mount Sinai's recovery wing, backlit by that harsh Manhattan morning light. He wasn't looking at me. He was scrolling through his phone, thumb moving with the kind of casual indifference you reserve for checking sports scores or the weather. I blinked through the fog of anesthesia, tried to sit up. Couldn't. Darius? He didn't turn. My eyes fell to my lap, a manila folder, legal-sized, the kind that changes lives. I knew what it was before I even opened it. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The letters blurred. I read it again, and again. My fingers still shaking from the surgery, from the trauma my body had just endured, pulled the papers closer. You're joking. That's when he finally looked at me. Not with guilt, not with shame, with annoyance. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Ella. My surgical scar started to bleed. I felt the warmth spreading beneath the bandages, that wet, sticky sensation that meant something had torn. Maybe a stitch, maybe something deeper. I just gave you my kidney. My voice cracked. Yesterday. They took it out of my body yesterday and put it in yours, and I'm grateful. He said it the way you'd thank a waitress for refilling your water, but we both know this marriage has been over for a while. We both know. No. I didn't know. I knew that 6 months ago, when his kidneys started failing, I was the one who sat through every doctor's appointment. I was the one who held his hand through dialysis. I was the one who got tested twice to make sure I was a match. I was the one who loved him. When did you plan this? The words came out quieter than I intended. Calmer. That's shock, I think. When your body gets so overwhelmed it just shuts down the volume. Darius sighed. Actually sighed. Like I was inconveniencing him. Just sign it, Ella. You've served your purpose. Served your purpose. I stared at him. This man I'd married in a courthouse in Brooklyn when we were 26 and broke and stupid in love. This man whose student loans I'd helped pay off. Whose mother I'd taken care of when she had her hip replacement. Whose dreams I'd supported even when they changed every 6 months. This man whose life I had literally just saved. The divorce papers had a company name on them I didn't recognize. Hartwell Capital Group. Some address in Tribeca. I squinted at the asset division section. Our apartment, the one-bedroom in Astoria we'd scraped together a down payment for, was listed. But the equity split was wrong. Way wrong. What's Hartwell Capital? Doesn't matter. It's on our divorce papers, Darius. It matters. He moved toward the door. Done with this conversation. Done with me. That's when I saw her. In the doorway. Just a shadow at first. Then she stepped into the fluorescent light. Darius's mother, Vivian. She wasn't wearing the concerned, doting expression she'd had yesterday when they wheeled me into surgery. When she'd squeezed my hand and whispered, "You're saving my boy's life. I'll never forget this, Ella, never." No. She was smirking. This small, satisfied smile, like she'd just won something. Our eyes met. And in that split second, I understood. This wasn't Darius's idea. This was hers. You planned this, I whispered, not to him, to her. You both planned this. Vivian's smile widened. Just a fraction. Just enough. Darius grabbed his jacket from the chair. The lawyer's info is in the folder. He'll walk you through everything. Try to make this civil, Ella. For both our sakes. For both our sakes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip out my IV and throw something. I wanted to ask him how a human being could do this to another human being who had just given them an organ. But I didn't. I just looked at him. At his mother. At these two people I'd welcomed into my life. Into my heart. Into my body. And I smiled. Not a big smile. Not a crazy one. Just a smile. Okay, I said softly. Darius paused. Confused. He'd expected tears. Begging. Maybe anger. Okay? Yeah. I laid my head back on the pillow. Closed my eyes. You can go now. I heard his footsteps. his mother's heels clicking on linoleum, the door closing. And then I was alone. Alone in a hospital bed, cut open and discarded, with divorce papers on my lap and blood seeping through my bandages. But here's the thing they didn't know. Here's the thing Darius and his smirking mother couldn't possibly understand. I'd been raised in the Bronx by a single mom who worked 3 jobs. I'd put myself through college. I'd survived New York City for 15 years on grit and rage, and the kind of resilience you only learn when the world keeps trying to break you and you refuse to stay broken. And I'd just given these people exactly what they wanted, which meant they'd underestimated me. That was their first mistake. In the hallway, Vivian's phone buzzes. A text from her lawyer. Transfer complete. The Astoria property is now under Hartwell Holdings. She'll never know. But in room 847, Ella opens her eyes and starts making a list. The smell of hospital disinfectant always takes me back to a different time, a softer time, before the divorce papers, before the smirk in the doorway. It takes me back to the first time I ever sat in a dialysis chair next to Darius. That was 18 months ago. We were 33, too young for kidney failure, too young for any of this. But his father had died of the same thing at 47, and genetics don't care about fair. I remember the sound of those machines, that rhythmic whoosh click, pumping his blood out and back in, 3 times a week, 4 hours at a time. I'd take the 7 train from our place in Astoria straight to the dialysis center on East 68th after my shift at the accounting firm. Sometimes I wouldn't even go home first. Just pack a change of clothes, bring dinner in Tupperware, sit beside him while his body tried to filter toxins it couldn't handle anymore. "You don't have to come every time," he'd say. But I did. Because that's what love looked like to me. People like me, we don't love halfway. My mother taught me that. She raised me alone in a 3rd-floor walk-up in the Bronx, working the breakfast shift at a diner, the evening shift cleaning offices in Midtown, and Saturdays doing alterations for a tailor on Fordham Road. She never complained, not once. She'd come home smelling like coffee and pine sol, kiss my forehead, and ask about my homework. "Mija," she'd say, "when you love someone, you show up. Every single time." So I showed up for Darius. I showed up when we were 22 and broke, waiting tables at the same restaurant in Williamsburg. He had big dreams back then, wanted to get his MBA, work in finance, build something. I'd pick up double shifts on weekends so he could study. Made his lunches, turkey and Swiss on whole wheat, the way he liked it, with those salt and vinegar chips he'd eat during his afternoon break. I showed up when his father got sick. Drove Darius to Jersey every weekend for 6 months, sat in those awful waiting rooms that smell like fear and fake flowers, held his hand when the monitors finally flatlined at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I showed up when his mother Vivian needed hip surgery. Took a week off work unpaid to stay at her place in Queens, help her to the bathroom, cook her meals, change her bandages. She cried and called me the daughter I never had. I believed her. And when Darius got his diagnosis, stage 4 kidney disease, genetic polycystic kidney disorder, the same thing that killed his father, I didn't hesitate. "I'll get tested," I said. He cried. Actually broke down in our tiny kitchen, slid down the cabinet doors onto the floor and sobbed like a child. "Ella, I can't ask you to do this." "You're not asking, I'm offering." The testing took weeks. Blood work, tissue typing, psychological evaluations. They ask you questions to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Are you being coerced? Do you understand the risks? Are you sure you want to give an organ to this person? Yes, yes, yes. Because I'd watched this man fight for every good thing in his life. I'd seen him grieve his father, support his mother, push through graduate school while working full-time. I'd seen his strength. And I loved him for it. The nurse at the transplant center, Linda, sweet woman with gray hair and kind eyes, she pulled me aside one day after my final clearance exam. "Honey," she said, "I've been doing this for 23 years. I've never seen a living donor this devoted." I didn't know what to say to that. It felt like she was praising me for something that shouldn't need praise, like saying someone deserves a medal for breathing. "He's my husband," I said simply. She squeezed my hand. "He's lucky." The surgery was scheduled for October 14th. I remember Darius the night before, lying beside me in our bed, his hand on my stomach. "What if something goes wrong?" he whispered. "It won't. But what if it does? What if you? Then you'll take care of yourself. You'll live a good life. You'll remember me." He kissed my forehead. "I love you so much, Ella. I don't know what I'd do without you." I fell asleep believing him. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. Thank you to everyone who helps keep these stories alive. Every word you share, every act of kindness helps protect those who still believe in family. The morning of the surgery, Vivian was there. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "You're saving my boy's life," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'll never forget this, Ella. Never." She smelled like her usual perfume, something expensive and floral that she wore to church. I hugged her back. I didn't see the way she glanced at Darius over my shoulder. I didn't notice how quickly she let go. I didn't know I was already being erased. I was discharged from Mount Sinai 3 days after the surgery. Still bleeding through my bandages, still unable to stand up straight. Darius didn't come to pick me up. His mother did. Vivian drove me back to Astoria in silence, helped me up the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment, my apartment now, I guess, and left without saying goodbye. Just set my overnight bag by the door and walked out. The divorce papers were still on the kitchen counter where I'd left them. I stared at that manila folder for 2 hours before I finally called someone. My friend Rachel. The one who'd gone through her own divorce last year. "Ella, listen to me," she said, her voice tight with something I couldn't quite place. "Urgency, maybe? Fear? Don't sign anything. Not yet. I'm giving you my lawyer's number, David Chen. He's in the financial district. Call him. Today." "Rachel? I can't afford. He owes me a favor. Just call him." So I did. David Chen's office was on the 32nd floor of a building on Wall Street. Glass and steel and the kind of view that makes you feel both powerful and insignificant at the same time. I took the subway, couldn't afford an Uber, not anymore, and felt every jolt of the 7 train in my abdomen. David was younger than I expected, maybe 40, sharp suit, sharper eyes. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Show me everything," he said. "Every document Darius gave you. Every paper you signed in the last 6 months." I handed him the divorce petition, the asset division paperwork, and then because something in his tone made me nervous, I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through my photos. There, October 12th, 2 days before the surgery. A photo of a document Darius had asked me to sign. Just hospital consent forms, he'd said. Standard pre-op stuff. They need both our signatures since we're married. I'd been packing my overnight bag. Nervous. Terrified, actually. About to let them cut me open and take a piece of me out. So I signed it. Didn't even read it. I showed David the photo. He went very still. "Ella," he said quietly, "do you know what this is? Hospital paperwork?" "No." He zoomed in on the document. "This is a quitclaim deed. You signed over your interest in the Astoria apartment." The room tilted. "What?" "And this," he scrolled down, "this is a transfer of joint bank account assets into a Hartwell Capital Group." He looked up at me. "The same company listed in your divorce papers." My mouth went dry. But Darius said, I know what he said. David's jaw tightened. "Let me make a call." He stepped out of the office. I sat there, staring at my hands, at the scar on my abdomen that was still weeping through the gauze, at the wedding ring I was still wearing like an idiot. When David came back, his face was granite. "Hartwell Capital Group is a shell company, registered in Delaware 3 months ago." He slid a printout across the desk. "The primary officer is listed as Nina Voss." That name. I knew that name. "Nina works with Darius," I said slowly, "at the consulting firm. They're on the same team." David nodded. "Ella, you need to understand what happened here. Darius transferred all your joint assets, the apartment equity, your savings, everything into this shell company before the surgery. Then he filed for divorce the day after. Under New York law, anything transferred before the separation date isn't part of the marital estate. So he gets to keep everything. Unless we can prove fraud. Which we can, but it's going to be ugly." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. "He asked me to save his life," I whispered. "I gave him my kidney." "I know. And he planned this? Before the surgery?" David's silence was answer enough. I left his office in a fog. Walked 14 blocks before I realized I was going the wrong direction. The pain in my side was excruciating, but I barely felt it. Everything inside me had gone numb. My phone rang. "Vivian." I answered without thinking. "Ella, darling, we need to talk." Her voice was syrupy. False. I know this is difficult, but you have to understand, Darius deserves to be with someone who can truly support his future. Someone with means. With connections. I just gave him my kidney. And we're grateful. Truly. But marriage is about more than gratitude, dear. A pause. Nina comes from a very good family. Her father owns property in the Hamptons. She can give Darius the kind of life he's worked so hard for. Nina. How long? My voice didn't sound like mine. How long what? How long have they been together? Vivian sighed. Like I was being tedious. Does it matter? What's done is done. Move on, Ella. Find someone at your own level. She hung up. I stood there on the corner of Worth and Church, tourists streaming past me, sirens wailing in the distance, the city pulsing with its usual indifferent chaos. And I understood. This wasn't spontaneous, this wasn't a breakdown or a moment of weakness. This was calculated, orchestrated, planned. They'd used me, harvested what they needed, discarded the rest. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way. I walked back to David Chen's office. Rode the elevator to the 32nd floor. Knocked on his door. I need you to tell me everything, I said, every dirty trick they used, every loophole, every lie. David looked at me. Really looked at me. And then what? I smiled. The same smile I'd given Darius in that hospital room. And then I need you to help me burn it all down. I moved out of the Astoria apartment on a Thursday. Not because I wanted to. Because the locks had been changed. I came home from physical therapy, still couldn't stand up straight, still bleeding through the bandages if I moved wrong and my key didn't work. Just turned uselessly in the cylinder, metal scraping against metal, going nowhere. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes. Trying it again and again. Like if I just believed hard enough, the door would open and this would all be some terrible mistake. A neighbor passed me on the stairs, Mrs. Alvarez from 3B. We'd lived across the hall from each other for 6 years. I'd watered her plants when she visited her daughter in Miami. She'd brought me empanadas when Darius's father died. She looked at me, looked away, kept walking. That's when I knew. They'd already told the story, their version. I called the building super. He showed up 20 minutes later, wouldn't meet my eyes. Your husband said you moved out, he mumbled, said to box up anything you left behind. I didn't move out, I was in the hospital. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Look, lady, I just work here. Your stuff's in the basement, storage unit 12. 2 cardboard boxes. 11 years of marriage, a decade of building a life together, and it fit in 2 boxes. My clothes, some books, a framed photo of my mother. That was it. Everything else, the furniture we'd picked out together, the dishes, the coffee maker I'd bought him for his 30th birthday, gone. Or maybe never really mine to begin with. I took a cab to Rachel's place in Bed-Stuy, watched the city blur past through rain-streaked windows. The streetlights looked like watercolor paintings, everything soft and bleeding together. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. You okay, miss? I nodded. Didn't trust my voice. Rachel's couch became my world. She didn't ask questions, just gave me a blanket, a pillow, and space, went to work in the mornings, came home with takeout in the evenings, left me alone in the quiet. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, 37 of them. I memorized their shapes. That one looked like a river, that one like a question mark. The TV was always on but muted, just flickering light and silent mouths. I couldn't stand the sound of voices, couldn't stand the noise. My phone stopped ringing after a while. At first, people called. Darius's friends. Our friends, I thought. But I guess they were always his. We're so sorry to hear about the separation. That word. Separation. Like it was mutual. Like I'd had a choice. Then Vivian's sister, her church group, all the people I'd fed at Thanksgiving, bought Christmas gifts for, showed up for. We think it's best if you give everyone some space, Ella. Space. The apartment was so quiet. Even the sounds of the city, the sirens, the trash trucks at 4 a.m., the couple upstairs fighting in Spanish felt far away, muffled, like I was underwater. Rachel would find me sometimes just sitting in the dark, not doing anything, not even thinking really, just existing in the absence of everything I'd been. "Ella," she'd say gently, "did you eat today?" I couldn't remember. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget for just a second, forget that my marriage was over, forget that I'd been erased. Then I'd feel the scar, that angry red line across my abdomen, and remember. I gave him a part of my body. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. I let them cut me open, let them reach inside and take something vital and irreplaceable, let them close me back up, broken and incomplete. And he threw me out like trash. I started touching the scar compulsively. Through my shirt, under the bandages when I changed them, following the ridge of it with my fingertips. This was proof, physical proof that I had loved him, that I had tried, that I had given everything. But proof doesn't matter when no one's looking. On the 6th day, I saw them. I'd gone back to Astoria. Stupid, masochistic. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd feel something. Closure, anger, anything. They were coming out of the building. Darius and Nina. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand in his. Designer bag, expensive coat, the kind of polish that comes from money you didn't have to earn. She looked up, saw me across the street, whispered something to Darius. He glanced my way, no recognition, no guilt, just annoyance. Like I was a panhandler he had to step around. They kept walking. I stood there on the corner, my corner, the one I'd stood on 100 times, waiting for the bus to work, and watched my husband walk away with his new life. The woman who would sleep in my bed, eat off my dishes, live in my home. The woman he'd chosen before he'd even asked me for my kidney. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. That night, I went back to Rachel's couch. Counted the cracks in the ceiling again. 37. And then I stopped counting. I closed my eyes, and in the darkness behind my eyelids, something shifted. Not hope. Not yet. But maybe. The absence of hopelessness. A space where something else could grow. Maya showed up on Rachel's doorstep on a Tuesday with her laptop and a look I couldn't quite read. "You need to see this," she said. I was still in my pajamas, still on the couch, still counting ceiling cracks when the walls felt too close. She sat down beside me, opened her laptop, pulled up a video. New news, local hero segment. There was Darius, standing in front of a hospital, Mount Sinai, the same one where they'd taken my kidney, looking healthy, glowing actually. Wearing that charcoal suit I'd helped him pick out for job interviews 2 years ago. The reporter smiled warmly. Darius Hartwell is calling it his second chance at life. Just 3 months ago, he received a life-saving kidney transplant from an anonymous donor. Anonymous. My hands went cold. "I'll be forever grateful," Darius said, his voice breaking just enough to sound sincere. "This person gave me everything. A future. Hope. I want to dedicate my life to making sure others have that same chance." The camera panned slightly. And there she was. Nina. Standing just behind him, close enough to be significant, her hand resting lightly on his arm, designer dress, perfect smile. The reporter's voice continued. "Hartwell is launching a new biotech consulting venture focused on organ donation awareness, in partnership with Voss Medical Solutions." Maya paused the video. "Voss Medical Solutions," she said quietly. "That's Nina's family company. Her father owns it." I stared at the frozen frame, at Darius's face, at Nina's hand on his arm. "Keep watching," Maya whispered. She clicked to another tab. A business article. Crane's New York business. Hartwell-Voss partnership secures $2.3 million in seed funding for transplant tech initiative. There was a photo, Darius and Nina shaking hands with investors. All smiles, all success. The article was dated October 28th, 2 weeks after my surgery. "Ella." Maya's voice was careful. "Measured." They filed the LLC paperwork in August. 2 months before they took my kidney. "They're using your story," Maya said, "your sacrifice. They're building an empire on your body, and you're not even mentioned. You're anonymous." I couldn't speak. She pulled up another window, social media, Darius's LinkedIn. Honored to announce the launch of LifeBridge Consulting. My journey from near death to renewed purpose has taught me the value of second chances. Excited to work alongside my incredible partner Nina Voss to transform the organ donation landscape. Number. Second chance number. Gratitude number. Innovation. 2,000 likes. 300 comments. So inspiring. You're a hero, Darius. What an incredible story of survival. My story. My pain. My body. And I was invisible. The room was so quiet I could hear the radiator hissing. The distant sound of traffic on Fulton Street. My own breathing. They didn't just leave you, Maya said softly. They used you, planned it, took what they needed, and turned it into profit. I touched my scar through my shirt. That angry red line. The proof of my love. My sacrifice. They'd monetized it. Something inside me, something that had been curled up and trembling in the dark for weeks, shifted. Not anger, not yet. Clarity. Cold, sharp, perfect clarity. They think I'm gone, I said. My voice sounded strange. Calm. They think I'm too broken to fight back. Maya looked at me. Are you? I stared at the screen. At Darius's smile. At Nina's perfectly manicured hand on his arm. At the investors shaking hands over my kidney. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive, for people still finding their voice after betrayal. No, I said. I stood up, felt the pull of the scar. The ache of healing tissue. Call David Chen, I said. Tell him I need to see him. Today. What are you going to do? I smiled. The same smile I'd given Darius in that hospital room. The smile of someone who's done being silent. I'm going to show them what anonymous looks like when she has a name. David Chen's office felt different the second time. Not intimidating. Not cold. Just functional. A place where work gets done. Tell me what you want, he said, leaning back in his chair. I didn't hesitate. I want everything back. The apartment, the savings, my name cleared. I paused. And I want them to know that I know. David nodded slowly. That's going to require evidence. A lot of it, and some of it won't be easy to get. I don't care. He studied me for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. I'm bringing in someone, he said. She's intense. But she's the best forensic accountant in the city. If there's money hidden, she'll find it. Her name was Sterling Walsh. She walked into David's office 3 days later, wearing a leather jacket and Doc Martens, carrying a laptop covered in activist stickers. Mid-40s maybe. Sharp eyes, sharper smile. So you're the kidney girl, she said, sitting down without being invited. He blinked. Excuse me? That's what they're calling you in the filing documents. Anonymous living donor. Like you're a side character in your own life. She opened her laptop. Let's change that narrative. There comes a point when silence stops meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. We started small. Sterling pulled the hospital records first. Every form I'd signed, every consent document, every pre-op questionnaire. Including the one where I'd specifically stated, I am donating freely, without coercion or pressure from any party. She found the intake audio logs, the ones where the transplant coordinator had asked me 3 separate times if anyone was pressuring me to donate. My voice on the recording, no, this is my choice. But then, underneath, almost inaudible, Darius's voice in the background, tell them it's your choice, Ella. Just say it. Sterling isolated the audio. Enhanced it. Made it crystal clear. That's coercion, she said flatly. Medical ethics violation. Could invalidate the entire transplant consent. I stared at the audio file on her screen. For years, I mistook generosity for love. Now, I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. Next, the shell company. Sterling went through every transaction in Hartwell Capital Group with surgical precision. Found the quitclaim deed I'd signed, the one Darius had told me was hospital paperwork. Found the bank transfers. The new accounts opened in Delaware. And then she found something else. Nina Voss isn't just a co-founder, Sterling said, pulling up a corporate filing. She's the primary capital investor. She put in $850,000 in August. Before the surgery. Before you even knew you were donating. Sterling's eyes gleamed. They bought your kidney, Ella. They just used marriage as the payment method. My hands trembled. Not from fear. From something else. Clarity. I went back to Queens on a Saturday morning. Vivian's apartment. The place I'd cleaned and cared for when she'd recovered from hip surgery, where I'd cooked Sunday dinners for years. I knocked. She opened the door, surprised. "Ella, I didn't expect. I just wanted to talk," I said softly. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. I sat on her couch, the one I'd helped her pick out at that furniture store in Flushing, and placed my phone on the coffee table, recording app open. She didn't notice. "I don't understand," I said, letting my voice break just a little. "What did I do wrong?" Vivian sighed. "Ella, you're a sweet girl. But Darius needs someone who can match his ambition, someone with resources, with connections." "So you knew?" "Before the surgery." "Of course we knew." She said it casually, like it was obvious. "Nina's father has connections at Columbia Presbyterian, Sloan Kettering. She can open doors for Darius, real doors. Not just emotional support. I gave him my kidney. And we're grateful." She reached over, patted my hand. "But gratitude isn't a foundation for marriage, dear. You've served your purpose. Move on." "Served your purpose?" I smiled, picked up my phone. "Thank you for being honest." I left before she could ask why I was thanking her. Sterling found the texts 2 weeks later. Buried in Darius's cloud backup. Messages between him and Nina from September, 1 month before my surgery. "Darius, once the transplant is done, she's useless. The lawyer says we wait 48 hours post-op for the divorce filing. Looks less suspicious. Nina. And she signed the property transfer? Darius. Like a puppy. She trusts me completely. This is almost too easy." I read them sitting in a coffee shop on Lexington Avenue, rain drumming against the windows, my cappuccino going cold. I didn't cry. I just added the screenshots to the folder. The folder was getting thick. Audio recordings, bank statements, corporate filings, text messages, medical ethics violations, testimonies from nurses who remembered how devoted I'd been. Every piece of evidence, a small knife cutting through the lies they'd built. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. My phone started ringing more frequently. Darius, Vivian, their lawyer. I didn't answer. Let them wonder, let them panic. For the first time in months, I felt something besides pain. Control. I met with David and Sterling on a Thursday. "We have everything," David said, spreading documents across his conference table. "Fraud, coercion, breach of fiduciary duty, medical ethics violations. We can file next week." Sterling leaned forward. "Ella, what I found will blow the courtroom open. But you need to be ready. This is going to get ugly." I looked at the evidence, at my life, reduced to paper and audio files. Then I looked up. "File it." David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his eyebrows raised. "Interesting," he murmured. "Darius's lawyer just requested an emergency meeting." Sterling grinned. "They know something's coming." I stood up, looked out the window at the city below. All those buildings, all those people, all those stories of betrayal and survival. They taught me that love meant giving. Today, I'm teaching myself that love can also mean stopping. "Let them know," I said quietly. "Let them know the silence is over." David nodded, started typing an email. The storm was coming, and this time, I was the one holding the lightning. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fresh coffee. Manhattan Family Court, Part 12, 3rd floor. I'd been here twice before for pre-trial motions, but today was different. Today, the gallery was full. Reporters from the Post, the Times, even a local TV crew. Word had gotten out somehow. Probably Sterling, who understood that public pressure was its own kind of justice. Transplant donor sues husband for fraud. That was the headline they were chasing. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside David and Sterling. My hands were folded in my lap. Steady. I'd practiced this. Rehearsed my breathing. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. The doors opened. Darius walked in wearing his charcoal suit, the one I'd helped him pick out, looking composed, confident, like a man who'd done nothing wrong. Nina was beside him. Cream-colored dress, designer bag. That same perfect smile I'd seen in the photo outside our apartment. Our apartment, The one they'd stolen. Vivian sat in the second row, stone-faced, wearing her church pearls. They didn't look at me. Not once. The judge entered, Honorable Margaret Reyes, 60-something, sharp eyes, no patience for games. "We're here for the matter of Martinez v. Hartwell," she said. "Fraud, coercion, and breach of fiduciary duty related to organ donation and asset transfer. Counselors, are we ready?" Darius's lawyer stood, Vincent something, expensive firm, slicked back hair. "Your Honor, this is a simple dissolution of marriage complicated by the plaintiff's emotional instability following a voluntary medical procedure." Voluntary. I whispered the word without meaning to. Sterling's hand touched my arm. "Wait," the lawyer continued. "My client and Miss Martinez grew apart naturally. The asset transfers in question were legitimate business restructuring." Business restructuring. Sterling stood, her voice cutting through the room like glass. "Your Honor, if I may." Judge Reyes nodded. Sterling opened her laptop. "Let's talk about timing," she said, her voice calm but lethal. "On August 14th, Mr. Hartwell and Miss Voss registered Hartwell Capital Group as a Delaware LLC. Miss Voss, Martinez was not informed." She clicked. A document appeared on the courtroom screen. On September 3rd, Miss Voss deposited $850,000 into this company as primary investor. Nina shifted in her seat. On October 12th, 2 days before Miss Martinez's surgery, Mr. paid a maid. Hartwell convinced her to sign what he called hospital consent forms. In reality, these were quitclaim deeds transferring all marital property into the shell company. The screen changed. My signature, my handwriting. That document I'd signed while packing my hospital bag, terrified and trusting. Miss Martinez was not represented by counsel, was not advised to seek counsel, and was under significant emotional duress regarding her husband's medical condition. Sterling clicked again. Text messages filled the screen. Darius to Nina, September 28th. "Once the transplant is done, she's useless. Lawyer says we wait 48 hours post-op for divorce filing." The courtroom went silent. Nina to Darius, "And she signed the property transfer?" Darius, like a puppy, "She trusts me completely." "This is almost too easy." I heard someone gasp. "A reporter, maybe." Darius's face had gone white. "Your Honor," Sterling continued, "we also obtained audio recordings from the transplant coordinator's pre-op interviews." She pressed play. My voice, tinny through the speakers, "No, this is my choice." Then, underneath Darius's voice, clear as day now, "Tell them it's your choice, Ella. Just say it." Judge Reyes leaned forward. "Mr. Hartwell, did you coach your wife during her medical evaluation?" Darius's lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, this is taken out of context. I'm asking your client, counselor." Darius stood slowly. I was just supporting her decision." By telling her what to say, the judge's voice was ice. Sterling wasn't done. "There's more, Your Honor." She pulled up another document. "Life insurance policy. Taken out on Miss Martinez, 3 weeks before surgery. Beneficiary: Darius Hartwell. Payout in case of surgical death, $500,000. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbling, cameras flashing, Nina's face crumbling. "He insured my life," I said quietly. But the microphone caught it. "In case I died giving him my kidney." Darius collapsed. Not dramatically, just, his knees buckled. He grabbed the table, breathing hard, hand going to his side, right where my kidney was now. Where my kidney was keeping him alive. He couldn't finish. His face twisted in pain. The bailiff moved forward. "Sir, do you need medical?" "I'm fine." But he wasn't. The stress, the exposure, the weight of it all, his body was rejecting the truth the way it might reject an organ. Poetic, really. Nina stood up, frantic. "I want immunity. I'm not going down for this. This was his idea. I just provided funding." "Miss Voss, sit down," Judge Reyes commanded. "No, I'm not." Nina tried to leave. The bailiff blocked the door. "Nobody leaves until I'm finished," the judge said. She turned to me. "Miss Martinez, do you have anything you'd like to say?" I stood. The room fell silent. I looked at Darius, really looked at him. This man I'd loved. This man I'd saved. You told me love meant sacrifice, I said softly. So I sacrificed. My body, my savings, my dignity. My voice didn't shake. You taught me that family comes first, so I put you first. Every single day. I glanced at Vivian. You called me the daughter you never had. You cried when I gave him my kidney, and you smirked when he threw me away. Back to Darius. You planned this, calculated it, used my love like a business transaction. I paused. But here's what you didn't understand. You didn't just take my kidney, you took my trust, my faith in people, my ability to believe that goodness matters. The silence was absolute. And you know what? I'm taking it back. All of it. I sat down. Judge Reyes looked at Darius, at Nina, at the evidence on the screen. I'm granting a preliminary injunction, she said. All assets transferred from Miss Martinez are frozen pending full forensic audit. Mr. Hartwell, you and Miss Voss will remain in this jurisdiction. We're adjourning for 3 weeks while the DA reviews these materials for potential criminal charges. She banged the gavel. It was over. Darius tried to speak. His lawyer pulled him back. Nina was crying. Real tears this time. Vivian sat frozen, her pearls catching the fluorescent light. I stood, walked toward the door. A reporter called out, Miss Martinez, how do you feel? I stopped. Turned. Lighter, I said. And for the first time in months, I meant it. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. It was the sound of justice finally breathing. I didn't stay for the chaos. Didn't watch the reporters swarm Darius and Nina. Didn't see Vivian trying to slip out the side door, only to be stopped by a process server with fraud charges from the district attorney's office. I just walked out of the courthouse into the autumn light, took the subway home to Rachel's place, and made myself a cup of tea. The consequences came quietly. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just. Inevitably. Like gravity. Sterling called 2 weeks later. Darius is back on dialysis, she said, her voice neutral but satisfied. The stress triggered a rejection episode. His body's attacking your kidney. I should have felt something. Guilt, maybe. Concern. But all I felt was nothing. The irony, I said. Poetic, isn't it? Sterling paused. Nina's father pulled all funding from LifeBridge Consulting. Their lawyers won't touch Darius's defense. She's claiming she was manipulated, trying to distance herself. I pictured Nina in that cream-colored dress, standing beside Darius in court. How quickly that hand had left his arm when the texts appeared on the screen. They used to be a team, I said softly. Greed makes strange bedfellows, but it makes even stranger enemies. I saw them once more, 3 weeks later. By accident. I was walking past Mount Sinai, the same hospital where they'd taken my kidney, where Darius had handed me divorce papers, and there he was, coming out of the dialysis center. A looked smaller. Granger. The healthy glow from the TV interview was gone, replaced by that familiar dialysis pallor. His mother was with him, holding his arm, not gently, mechanically. She looked older too. The fraud charges had aged her. The shame of being exposed in front of her church, her friends, her neighbors. They didn't see me. But I heard Vivian's voice, sharp and bitter. This is your fault. If you'd just been patient, waited a few more years. She ruined everything, Darius snapped back. That vindictive. No. Vivian's voice turned cold. You got greedy. You got sloppy. And now we're both paying for it. They walked away, their argument fading into the Manhattan traffic. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. The court settlement came through in December. Full restoration of assets. The Astoria apartment returned to my name. Our joint savings plus damages for emotional distress and medical coercion. David negotiated a number I couldn't even process at first. They leveraged your body for profit, he said simply. This is restitution. I signed the papers in his office, my hand steady. Outside, the city was strung with Christmas lights. People rushing home with shopping bags. The season of giving. I thought about all the years I'd given. How much of myself I'd poured into a marriage that was built on sand. They used to whisper that I'd lost my mind. Now they avoid their own reflections. Maya told me the rest. She'd heard through mutual friends people who'd once been our friends, but who'd quietly chosen sides once the truth came out. Nina had moved back to Connecticut. Her father's company had distanced itself from the scandal, but the damage was done. The investors who'd funded LifeBridge pulled out. The biotech partnership dissolved. Darius had moved in with his mother. They lived in her small Queens apartment, two people trapped together by circumstance and shame, their alliance crumbling under the weight of their own choices. "He tried to call you," Maya said carefully. "Did you know?" "I'd blocked his number weeks ago, changed mine entirely." "I don't need to hear it," I said. There was one last encounter. I went back to the Astoria apartment in January. My apartment. The locks had been changed back. The space was empty. They'd taken the furniture when they'd thought they'd won. I walked through the rooms slowly, remembering, not the good times I'd learned those were mostly illusions, but remembering who I'd been, the woman who'd believed that love meant endless giving. There was a voicemail on the old landline. I'd forgotten to disconnect it. Darius's voice, ragged and desperate. "Ella, please. I'm sick. I need help. I deleted it before he could finish. Stood there in the empty living room, afternoon light streaming through the windows. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. I sold the apartment in March. Took the money and moved to a one-bedroom in Brooklyn, a place with no memories, no ghosts. Rachel helped me move in, hung curtains, ordered pizza. "How does it feel?" she asked. I looked around the clean, empty space. Mine. Only mine. "Light," I said. That night, I stood at the window, watching the city lights blink on across the river. Somewhere out there, Darius was probably on a dialysis machine, his body filtering toxins through mechanical means because my kidney, the one he'd stolen through manipulation, was failing him. Somewhere, Nina was probably lying awake, wondering how her perfect plan had backfired so spectacularly. Somewhere, Vivian was probably praying for forgiveness she'd never actually sought. And I was here, free. Not because I'd destroyed them, because I'd simply stepped out of their way and let their choices catch up to them. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. I touched my scar through my shirt. That red line that would fade but never disappear. Proof that I'd loved, that I'd given, that I'd survived. And that survival, I was learning, was its own kind of victory. I closed the curtains, made myself tea, and for the first time in a year, slept through the night. Without dreaming of them at all. 1 year later, I stood in front of a room full of women and felt their eyes on me, not with pity, not with judgment, with recognition. The Aurora Women's Health Foundation, a nonprofit I'd started with part of the settlement money. A space for women who'd been exploited by spouses during medical crises, coerced into donations, manipulated during treatment, abandoned after sacrifice. Women like me. "My name is Ella," I said into the microphone, my voice steady. "And a year and a half ago, I gave my husband my kidney. The next day, he asked for a divorce." The room was silent. But it wasn't the silence of shock. It was the silence of understanding. "I thought love meant giving everything," I continued. "My time, my money, my body. I thought if I just gave enough, I'd be enough." I paused, touched my side where the scar lived beneath my blouse. But I was wrong. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. In the front row, Sterling sat with her arms crossed, a small smile on her face. Beside her, Maya dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Rachel gave me a thumbs up. These were my people now. Not bound by blood or marriage, but by choice, by showing up, by staying. "Justice," I said carefully, "isn't about watching bad people fall. It's about standing again without hate." I meant it. There were nights I still woke up angry. Nights I replayed the moment Darius handed me those papers, the smirk on Vivian's face, Nina's hand on his arm. But those nights were fewer now, farther apart. Because I'd learned something in the silence after the courtroom, in the emptiness of my new apartment, in the long months of rebuilding. Revenge is a meal that never fills you. I used to want them to suffer, I admitted. I wanted Darius to feel every ounce of pain he'd caused me. I wanted his mother to lose everything. I wanted Nina to understand what she'd helped destroy. A few heads nodded in the audience. And for a while, I got that. They did suffer, they did lose things, but you know what? It didn't make me whole. I took a breath. What made me whole was choosing to stop giving my pain to people who'd never valued my love. Justice isn't about watching them fall, it's about standing again without hate. Someone in the back row raised her hand. Young woman, maybe mid-20s, wearing scrubs, probably a nurse on her lunch break. "How did you forgive them?" she asked quietly. I considered the question. Really considered it. "I didn't," I said honestly. "Not in the way people think forgiveness works. I didn't call Darius and say, 'I forgive you.' I didn't write his mother a letter. I didn't absolve them. I looked at the woman, at all of them. But I forgave myself. For trusting people who didn't deserve it. For ignoring red flags. For believing that sacrifice was the same as love." I smiled sadly. And I chose peace over pride. I chose to stop carrying their betrayal like a weight I'd earned. I used to believe love meant giving everything. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. After the talk, women came up to me one by one, shared their stories. A woman whose husband had convinced her to be a surrogate for his mistress. Another who donated bone marrow to her brother, only to be written out of the family will. Story after story of bodies used, trust weaponized, love commodified. I listened, held hands, gave out the foundation's resources. Legal aid, therapy referrals, support groups. This was justice too, not the kind that happens in courtrooms, the kind that happens in quiet rooms where broken people learn they're not alone. Sterling walked me to the subway after. "You did good today," she said. "I just told the truth." "The truth is the hardest thing to tell." She stopped at the top of the stairs. "You know he tried to contact the foundation, right?" I looked at her. "Darius?" "Left a voicemail. Wanted to explain his side. Maybe get you to understand." Sterling's eyes were hard. I deleted it. I nodded slowly. "Thank you." "You don't owe him your ear, Ella." "Not anymore." She was right. I took the train to Brooklyn. Got off at my stop. Walked the 3 blocks to my apartment, the one with the balcony I'd always wanted, the one with morning light and room for plants. Inside, I made tea, put on music, opened the windows. The city hummed below. Sirens and laughter and the distant rumble of trains. All that noise that used to feel overwhelming now just felt alive. I stepped onto the balcony, watched the sun starting to set over the skyline, orange and pink bleeding into purple. My phone buzzed. A text from a woman who'd been at the talk today. "Thank you for your story. I filed for separation this afternoon. First time I felt strong enough." I smiled. This was the justice they couldn't take back. Not the courtroom victory, not the money, not even Darius's kidney failing. This. The moment when pain transformed into purpose. When survival became a roadmap for others still lost in the dark. I touched my scar through my shirt. That red line I used to hate. Now it was just proof. That I'd loved. That I'd fought. That I'd chosen myself when no one else would. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in numbers, I hope my story reminds you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive, stories where justice doesn't shout, it heals. The sun dipped lower, the city lights began to blink on. And I stood there, breathing, whole, free. Justice gave me back my name. But peace gave me back myself. And that, I thought, watching the sky turn dark and beautiful, was worth more than any kidney. Worth more than any marriage. Worth everything.